Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing really well. So I am back today to do another retrospective throwback favourites, looking at my favourite books from 2015. This is all part of my project of going through some of my old favourite books. Eventually I will be rereading some of these in order to eventually be able to do an all-time favourites book video. But yeah, this time we are looking at my 2015 favourites. In 2015 I read 50 books and I feel like my reading was a lot more scatty. This would have been my second year of university and yeah, I just generally found it quite hard to read during term time. Not to say I didn't read anything at all, but I feel like I was really like slugging my way through both my studies and my reading, and I just couldn't get the balance quite right with either. So yes, 50 books this year as opposed to 79 in 2014, and instead of having a full top 10 list, I have 6 books that at the time I thought were my absolute favourites of the year. Book number 6 on this list is The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. Oh, this definitely says a lot about the time. I mean, this is a book that I absolutely stand by. I will not hear a bad word said about Marie Kondo. All my jumpers are folded in the Marie Kondo style. But yeah, this was 2015, so it was right about the time when I was starting to read a lot and watch a lot about minimalism and wanting to apply it to my own life. And I mean, if you've had a look at my bookshelves, you know for a fact that I am no minimalist. But I like a lot of the philosophies, especially like Marie Kondo's, of keeping things that spark joy or things that are actually useful for your life and not feeling an obligation to hold on to things for no good reason. Being like very intentional and thoughtful with your purchases, prioritizing experiences over things, you know, that's definitely something I need to get better at. But in theory, it's something that I like. But yeah, I would definitely say that between like 2015 to 2019, that was my real like love affair with minimalism, decluttering. And I definitely agree with Marie Kondo's assertion that if you're going to declutter, that you should get all of the items that you have in a particular category rather than just going by location. I think that's actually a really good, effective way of decluttering. So yeah, I really like this book. I don't think it would feature on like a favourite non-fiction of all time list, but it's definitely one that I have such a soft spot for. Book number 5 is The Colourless Tsukuru Tazaki and His Years of Pilgrimage by Haruki Murakami. I think this was the first Murakami book I've read. I think I've read 3: Norwegian Wood, this, and Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World. Is that the name of that book? I don't know, that was my least favourite anyway. I'm not really a big fan of Murakami's more like fantastical works. So this one is a book about a man who has this group of friends and then out of nowhere they stop talking to him. And then we meet him a few years later where this has led him down like this very dark, depressive path. And it's his journey of like finding out what happened and also trying to become okay with himself and not letting this estrangement like define his life. And I think 2015 Charlotte, who was incredibly insecure in her friendships, spent a lot of time crying about, do my friends actually like me? This felt somehow very cathartic. And it's not one that has really stuck with me. It's not one that would appear on my favourites list, but I feel like it met me at the right time. And it did have a bit of an impact on me, I can't lie. Be very curious to know if anybody else has read this one, because I feel like it's one that I saw lots of people talking about when it came out and since have just heard nothing at all. I think generally I'm also just not hearing a lot about Murakami right now. Changing tact entirely, book number 4 on this list is Royal Wedding by Meg Cabot. So this is a new instalment, or at least it was 7 years ago, to the Princess Diaries series, a rogue 11th book, which is taking place several years after the events of the last book, in which Mia has just gotten engaged to Michael Moscovitz, and we also find out that there is a family secret, which I will not spoil for you, but was rather shocking when I read it. I've mentioned before that The Princess Diaries was definitely one of those books that in my kind of drought of reading as a teenager, it was one of the books that I did go back to and reread a lot. I didn't do a lot of new reading, but I did do quite a bit of rereading whilst I was at school, and especially the 10th book in The Princess Diaries was one that I came back to again and again. So it was just so comforting to read this one. You've got all the trademark Princess Diaries isms, for example, a lot of pop cultural references, but they are updated to 2015, especially a lot of Game of Thrones references, which for me, and you know, one of the books that I'm going to be mentioning later, was very, very welcome for me. So yeah, this is definitely not one that would make a best books of all time, but definitely right place, right time. Always nice to get back into the world of Princess Diaries. Then book number 3 on this list is actually a series that I read kind of predictably from the last book, but this was the year that I read most of the books in the A Song of Ice and Fire series. I had read the first book, A Game of Thrones, in 2014, but then in 2015 I read A Clash of Kings, both parts of A Storm of Swords, A Feast of Crows, and I think part 1 of A Dance of Dragons. Part 2 came in 2016, and I have very, very strong memories of where I was when I was reading these. I believe I read Clash of Kings during my exam time, which was a choice indeed, and then I started reading A Storm of Swords and then just powered through it within about 2 days, and then I found myself like running to the shops to get the next part. And then I knew I was going to be going on holiday, so I decided that I absolutely had to have A Feast for Crows and The Dance of Dragons, and I just devoured these books very, very quickly, considering that they're all like 700-800 pages each. Yeah, in my life I've only really loved 2 fantasy series, A Song of Ice and Fire and Harry Potter. Never really gotten into other fantasy series as much as I have these, and I think it's because I just love these characters. I love how clearly defined they are. I love seeing their relationships to other characters in the series. So, you know, if we're talking favourite series, this would definitely rank there. But it's interesting because I actually haven't come back to the books since 2015-2016. The first time that I read the series is the only time that I've read them, and I think maybe it's because, you know, we've been waiting on Winds of Winter for such a long time. And just think, I've only been waiting since 2015. Think of all the poor souls who've been waiting since the last book came out in 2011. Come on, George. Probably if we get inklings that Winds of Winter is coming out, then I will go back to this series. But no, I do hold them in very high regard. Book number 2 on this list is Late Fragments by Kate Gross. This is one that I have not heard a single person talk about. I don't even know if it's in print anymore, but this is basically a memoir by the author who was a journalist who went all around the world, but at the time when she is writing, she is dying of cancer. And so for her 2 twin sons, she decides that she's going to write a memoir of her life, basically talking about all of her stories from her life and all of the lessons that she's picked up along the way. This was one I think I read around Easter of 2015, and it just made me cry. Made me cry in my mum's car. I think if you liked the memoir When Breath Becomes Air, you'll also really enjoy this. Very, very similar feeling and emotions. It's not one that I've come back to since reading it the first time, but it's one that I do think of with fondness. And then book number 1 on this list, my favourite book of 2015, was The Secret History by Donna Tartt, everybody's favourite dark academia. Once again, another book that was my favourite of the year, but I've not actually come back to. And I don't know how much of it is just me being a bit terrified that I wouldn't like it quite as much. But this is definitely one that I do want to reread along with If We Were Villains, because I love this. I thought this was absolutely beautiful. Obviously, like, dark and twisted, but really gorgeous. This is definitely one that I'm going to end up rereading as part of my all-time favourites project. I think especially because of the time that I was reading it. During my A-levels, I had actually done a classics degree, so I felt like I did understand a lot of the references, but I feel like I would understand even more of them now. But no, I felt very cool whilst I was reading it because I was like, I understand that reference. But also like this very twisted relationship between all of these characters. I think also being at university and being able to read this and then go to my university library and feel like I was being an academic all just contributed to that vibe. So yes, I'd be very curious to know if as an adult I have quite as much patience for it. I feel like I would. I feel like this would hold up. But yes, all remains to be seen. So there we go. Those are all of my 2015 favourites. I'm very interested to see, looking back at my 2015 reading, that The Dumb House wasn't actually on this list, because that was one that I definitely enjoyed. Not an all-time favourite, but I would have thought it would have been on my list, unless I was only going for books that I rated 5-star. But yeah, I feel like this was a bit of a meh reading year. I'm noticing a lot of books in here were books that I was studying, which kind of, to me, suggests that I was trying to ramp up my Goodreads goal by adding the books that I'd studied. So there's a lot of Shakespeare on here, a lot of books that I was reading for my Thomas More module in 3rd year. And you can definitely see from my reading how, like, during term time my reading just drops off, especially my fun reading, but then during holidays it's like cramming all the books. Also, hilariously, you can see the beginning of my dissertation taking route, because I started reading a lot of the Penguin Food series, which ended up inspiring my undergrad dissertation, which was about 18th century cookbooks. But yeah, I'm seeing names like Isabella Beeton and Hannah Glass, kind of kicking myself that I got rid of most of those books, because I'm pretty sure I won't be able to find them now. But yes, to conclude, those were all of my 2015 books. Do let me know if you've read any of the books that I've spoken about today. Alternatively, let me know what were you reading in 2015? Anything that you would recommend? I would love to hear from you. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.